Okay, can everybody see it? All good? Okay, so let's get started. First thing that I want to focus on is the different types of techniques, a quick revision of all of these techniques, and also how they get applied in the different poems. So most of you guys are aware of all of these: personification, being comparing obviously inanimate objects to humans. Tone and mood is very important. The two things I want to focus on today are symbolism and inference. So that being, what do certain themes symbolize, okay, and what do certain objects represent, okay, especially in regards to nature. The other thing is, obviously, we have to understand the 8 most common question types, which is what is the purpose of a technique? So we always have to understand what is the purpose and function? What is the effect of a technique? Can everybody write this down? So most of you guys understand what techniques are. You understand the definition for most techniques, but you don't really know what role that technique plays in conveying the poem's meaning or effect, okay? Typically, when we're thinking about effect, we're thinking about the emotional effect. So can everybody write that down? So everybody write down hashtag emotional effect, okay? Second thing is, we're always looking for the figurative meaning. Everybody write this down. Whenever we're looking at poetry, we're always looking for the figurative meaning or the symbolic meaning of words and phrases. Okay. The other thing is, when it comes to tone and mood, this can generally be signified in positive and negative. So everybody write this down: positive, negative, and then low modality, high modality. Okay. So when we're considering different emotions, or like even when we're considering the text, we need to figure out if it is high energy or low energy. Okay, guys, high energy or low energy. We also need to figure out who the speaker is in the poem and who they're talking to. All right, so can everybody write that down? Who is actually narrating the poem? Who's actually telling the poem, telling the story behind the poem? And who are they speaking to? Sometimes in poetry, we have like a father talking to a son. Sometimes we have just self-revelatory, like self-revelation, right? In which it's just the poet themselves. Okay, but we got to figure out who the main character is and what is their voice, right? In this, we need to kind of consider historical, like the historical time period or the time era from which the poem was written. Okay, that's very, very important, especially when you come across like civil rights movement, civil war movement, different time periods in terms of like both Australian and American backstories. Okay, inference, we have to figure out what obviously X or Y suggests or implies. This is typically in the symbolic meaning, okay? Symbolic meaning behind words. We also obviously need to compare and contrast different things. Structure and form, so if something is in free form or if it follows some kind of structure, like a rhyming couplet, for example, so a rhyming couplet is when you have 2 pairs of lines or a pair of lines that rhyme and that kind of continues on. So is it in free form or is it in like a kind of broken structure? Okay, or does it follow a consistent structure? And obviously, is there a rhyme scheme, whatnot? Symbol and theme. So this is where we need to determine what the central message or the central emotion of the passage represents. So without further ado, let's jump into the first passage by Judith Wright. Judith Wright, by the way, is a very, very famous Australian poem. So has anybody come across Judith Wright poetry before? Anybody come across Judith Wright? The reason why we're studying Judith Wright right now is because Judith Wright has popped up in the Selective multiple times in the last few years, right? Multiple times. At least in the last decade, Judith Wright has popped up at least 2 or 3 times, okay? So it's a very high likelihood you'll get a Judith Wright poem in the Selective. The other thing that you'll notice is that most of the poetry that we'll be analyzing today will be Australian poetry, okay? And we also have something called the Poetry 100 that's going to come up on Readly. Everybody write that down. So Poetry 100 is coming on Readly, which is basically going to be 100 poems that I've personally selected that you guys need to go through. And it's very likely that one of the poems that you guys get in the Selective will be out of this Poetry 100, okay? Because it's like the 100 most common Australian poems. Okay, let's begin. Here it says, along the road, the magpies walk with hands in pockets left and right. They tilt their heads and stroll and talk in their well-fitted black and white. Okay, so what kind of image do we have here? Or what does pockets symbolize? Hands in pockets. What emotion does that signify? That these magpies are like what? Like worried or confident? What do you guys think? Worried or confident? Hands in pockets. So we kind of get the idea that it's smug, okay, content, somewhat arrogant, okay, that kind of idea. Everybody got it? Hands in pockets. Typically, when we want to think of, like what we want to do when we think about these symbols, like for example, like hands in pockets, is we want to think, what is this symbol most commonly associated with? Okay, so let's write that down. What is this symbol most commonly? What is this symbol most commonly associated with? Okay, so who do you typically see with hands in pockets? Comment down below, guys. I want you guys to all comment down below and tell me, who do we typically see with hands in pockets? So we see like businessmen possibly, right? Or really smug teenagers with their hands in their pockets. Who else? What are some other examples of people who are very, very confident, who strut about, right, with hands in their pockets? What are some other examples? Comment down below, guys. Let's quickly use our brains. I want everybody to use their brains, right, as we're going through these exercises, because there's a lot to get through today. Okay, potentially lawyers, potentially judges, potentially certain relaxed teenagers, parents, basically anybody who is confident, strutting about, that kind of idea. Okay, everybody clear? That's what we want to obviously break down. Now it says left and right, they tilt their heads and stroll and walk. So again, when we look at these words, for example, like when we look at the word stroll and walk, why do we have the word stroll here? And why don't we have the word, like, let's say, like walking briskly or sprinting? Why do we have the word stroll? What does the word stroll mean in this case? What kind of emotion? Relaxed, nonchalant, okay? Carefree. That's the idea. Yeah, everybody got that? So let's write down the word nonchalant and let's write down the word carefree. So, okay, let me write this down. Nonchalant and then carefree. Okay, and they're well-fitted black and white. Again, well-fitted black and white makes it seem like this is a what? I'm looking for a word starting with S. Quickly, guys. S. S-U. S-U what? S-U-I. S-U-I-T. Suit. Okay, do you guys see all of this? All of this, hands in pockets, well-fitted black and white. Black and white is typically like tuxedo or suit, okay? It makes it seem like the magpie is kind of like, like a high-flying executive. That's the idea that we get so far. Without a care in the world, nonchalant, they tilt their heads and stroll and walk. Even when it says when they tilt their heads, when do people tilt their heads? Someone's like tilting their head while they're looking at you. What are they doing? They're kind of looking down on you. So tilting the head could be confused, right? But it also could be showing a sense of superiority, right? And showing a sense that they're judging you. Does that make sense? Everybody clear? Like they're like too proud. Okay, so they're proud. Okay, they're superior, and they're kind of in a point of judging you. Does that make sense? And obviously you spent YOU. Is that clear so far? So all of these things create a keyword cluster, okay? A cluster of keywords, keyword cluster, around basically like a business person that is confident. Everybody clear? So we have lots of these little details: hands in pocket, well-fitted black and white, tilt the head, stroll and walk. Okay. What other technique do we have here, guys? What other technique? And this is indeed the homework, guys. So unless I tell you otherwise, this is obviously the homework. Personification. Okay. And what is the effect of this personification? Why are these animals being compared to humans? I want you guys to think about that. Why are these animals being compared to humans? Think about this really quickly. Why are they being compared to humans? Why? Because we are trying to basically say that they are like higher class, right? They're more than animals, right? So oftentimes when we compare animals, so this is a rule of thumb, when we compare animals to humans, we're basically humanizing them, and that generally means raising them up a few levels. Does that make sense, guys? Right? Humanizing them, raising them up a few levels of power, okay? And this can be done in many different ways. Sometimes we humanize animals because we, like, for example, when dogs are humanized, when we humanize dogs by giving them emotions and feelings, okay, where basically it could be used in poetry to increase our sense of sympathy. Okay, it could be used to increase our sense of sympathy. Is that clear? You guys understand? Everybody clear? Everybody all good? Okay. Okay, let's continue. All right. The next thing is it says they look like certain gentlemen. So this continues that same idea, who seem nonchalant and wise until their meal is served, and then what clashing beaks, what greedy eyes. Okay, here we go. Right, clashing beaks, greedy eyes. So what's happened here? I'm looking for a word starting with T. Is it the same emotion? Like, so at the very beginning, we have like nonchalant, wise, it's calm. What kind of modality do we have here in the first two stanzas? Sorry, the first 6 lines. First 6 lines, right? What kind of emotion do we have? What kind of modality do we have? It is very low, right? The modality is very, very low, okay? Because they're just ambling about, okay? Ambling, they're just walking very, very slowly without a care in the world. It's kind of like you're walking through Circular Quay on a Sunday. Okay? Anybody been to Circular Quay on a Sunday? Like there's nobody around, right? And then suddenly there is a what? There is a transition, right? It transitions in like literally in a split second, like boom, gone, right? So right now it says clashing beaks and what greedy eyes, and we have an exclamation. Do you guys see that? So immediately we have what kind of emotion here, guys? A high modality negative. So we went from do you guys see that? Low modality positive to now high modality negative. Everybody clear? Everybody understand what modality is? Modality just means strength, okay? So if you guys are confused about what modality means, it just means strength. And so here we have clashing beaks, what greedy eyes, turmoil, anarchy, chaos. What are some other words? Chaos, anarchy, whatever, right? Everybody clear? Okay, so the next bit it says, but not one man that I've heard throws back his head in such a song of grace and praise, no man or bird. Their greed is brief, their joy is long, for each is born with such a throat as thanks his God with every note. Okay, so we went from very overall, very soft, very positive, to now turmoil and chaos. But what does it finish with? Like those last 6 lines, what kind of tone do we have in those last 6 lines? Okay, tone. Like what's the author's perspective, or sorry, what's the poet's perspective or opinion of these birds, of these magpies? Overall, does it end off with a negative note or a positive note? What do you guys think? Negative or positive? Or neutral? Okay. So it actually ends up on a positive note. Okay. It's kind of like positive close to neutral, but I would say positive to neutral. I mean, there's no correct answer here, but like I would say very, very close to neutral. Okay. Right. So in this case, when it says their greed is brief, their joy is long, this is a big clue. Their greed is brief. Brief means what? Short time, right? Joy is long time. So that means like their joy overall, way outweighs, their joy outweighs the negative. Do you guys see that? So that's why I say it's more positive than neutral. Is everybody clear on that? Does everybody understand what I mean? It's more positive than neutral.